Yep.
The plan, the United States federal government to substantially increase its diplomatic engagement with the People's Republic of China over outer space, transparency and confidence building measures constituted of information exchange for space activities, advanced notification for space policies, and enhanced space situational awareness capabilities and data exchange. Contention 1 is miscalc official U.S. space officers based inside of focus systems rendezvous and proximity operations are seen as a cover for ASAT testing, destroying any support for Chinese space security protocols. Sweden and He-16. U.S. perception of China's development of space capabilities best described as where the realignment of Chinese military is viewed by some of the U.S. reinforcing the perception of China's very different worth space. They seem to be little appreciating that many of the Chinese position exactly what the U.S. military is considering U.S. force strong opposition to Chinese proposal on space security. U.S. observers are suspicious of recent Chinese co-orbital RPOs because space activities. These activities are similar to U.S. demonstrations of RPO technology. Wolfram continues to hinder any significant efforts of bilateral space cooperation. U.S. and China tensions are mounting the dual use nature of space technology produces first check incentive risk rapid escalation, miscalculation, weeded, and He-16 the Western neighboring areas. No potential will be development of one dual use capabilities development of RPO a challenge of the stable relationship of operation for the foundation capabilities essential next generation space activities also vital ASAT 1 RPO demonstration of high intention and raise question about what the purpose of others development of capabilities and sector of tension over dual use capabilities testing and employment of direct consent kinetic kill weapons and conflict of present base capabilities and having a stronger armed crisis stability. U.S. increasingly worried about Chinese CBM attacks on land based in the Asian Pacific which utilize satellites for targeted crisis area. The U.S. and China can include a razor both sides strike force against other space activities which utilize out of control deterrence fails in space ambiguity means decision makers assume other states have a worst case intentions causing creative strike finch. 14 if it appears an early strike can neutralize the adversary's ability to counter deterrence by failure strategic stability must be stopped in space and must maintain overarching terms strategic and space ability and strictly linked shared understanding do not exist in the space criticality of space systems operational objective may be created attempting target lack of common understanding may create a risk of miscalculation instability and to undermine nuclear stability space is often dominant domain this could create first strike instability since the advantage of ability to user space weapon first space weapons may be uniquely destabilizing like other domains ambiguity exists regarding counter space weapons variables of interpretation when time is short and concept action and inaction is catastrophic decision makers lead towards worst case interpretation of action. This is a recipe for miscalculation. Miscalculation is likely due to the security dilemma in space of both the U.S. and China perceive space force inevitable creating defensive arms races clarifying intentions of J. 11 the China space weapons viewed as a broad asymmetric strategy offset U.S. military advantage. This applies China feels compelled to continue its offensive military program blister for insecurity on the part of A leads to insecurity for B which takes new steps to increase insecurity leading to increased insecurity for A. The military relationship between China and the U.S. embodies the security dilemma. Chinese thinking of space warfare reflects China's response to perceived U.S. threats to its national security. This triggered American suspicion about Chinese intentions in space because the military space relationship with government the security limits and medical to change the condition mutual mistrust and ongoing safety perception of American lead to space militarization a major motive for China and military to develop projects and avoid the domination the U.S. domination future wars perception of the threats of other countries declining could nullify the security dilemma. China and the U.S. can work together to push protective mechanisms for management in space of persons to avoid the stage will be to focus on reducing misunderstanding the effects of the security dilemma the cause of the action counteraction spiral will lose its hold space conflict as nuclear collapses all vital systems crucial to civilization of Mari 16 breakthroughs away in space including solar energy waste spills action territorial mining damage the world economy would be disasters humanity depends on space systems for communication exploration function integral life war space to disable key satellites consequences of space war be compared with those of nuclear disease destabilizing key constellations give early launch orders could be seen as opening the south of nuclear attack targeting instead of wider configuration TCBM solving for sharing clarifies benign intentions of both parties in space and unseats a culture of secrecy embedded within both national space programs. This posture shift underpins eventual political agreements and further restraint and improves international SSA collaboration. We did and He-16. Prospects of banning direct descent, kinetic kill, and RPOs, some RPOs limit any legitimate peaceful use of promising both to focus on TCMs for both direct descent and RPO or TCMs are moved to government the chair and create mutual trust and reduce misperception, miscalculate the report from the UNGD have there with TCMs information exchange on space policy information exchange related to space activity, direct notification for context, and visits to space sites improving information activities in space holds the most promising mitigating tension in the U.S.-China relationship. And this domain as SSA capabilities continue to improve becomes increasingly possible. May serve as a new technical means to underpin political agreements and behavior in space. Such agreements can be aimed at making political prejudice to our framework for first use of disrupting counter space weapons. There's a broader set of SSA capabilities relatively common among all spacefaring nations, so increasing data sharing of data and collaboration, enhancing and improving them will result in positive externalities that will benefit all countries. Better SSA will resolve the inevitable space arms race between the U.S. and China. Cooperation is key. More 11, the U.S. is more vulnerable than any other nation to attacking space assets. Venture warfare are more attractive options because of the difficulties achieving a satisfactory level of SSA. If China wants to catch up on the U.S. and face is better situated to be a major player because of its financial and technological resources and the potential for technological leapfrogging. 95% of today's tech has dual use, but China, what a nation says it's for civilian use and uses for military use as well. China's asymmetric sector clearly understands the weapons potential state holds of Sino-U.S. relationship to China must be prepared for a military conflict. Space race is more likely international arms states. No international mechanism to address problems such as space bringing unintentional interference with other nations. Space out the U.S. and China may find themselves in a self-fulfilling conflict. The U.S. and China must avoid an arms race. This SSA improves scenario analysis, is pedagogically value, enhances creativity and self-reflexivity, deconstructs cognitive biases and flawed ontological assumptions, and enables the imagination and creation of alternative futures. Barma et al. 16 scenario analysis not typically seen as serving corporate funding or policy is not inherently limited to these use to be characterized now announced destructive was encouraged and the combination to articulate possible future referred to as alternative worst scenarios are not forecasted prediction based on linear extrapolation, nor should they be equated with simulation, which are representation of real decision-making process and anticipation of possible future states of the world with causal forces that lead those futures to make scenario analysis useful. Ability of decision-making to imagine discontinuities is constrained by existing methodologies exacerbated by cognitive bias such as drifting and confirmation bias. Power scenarios lies in their ability to help individuals break out of the conventional thinking alternative future worlds through structured analytical processes and enable policy-making to envision and adapt to something different from the known present. Contention 2 is cooperation. U.S.-China cooperation is key to effective space mitigation measures to Pekane. 15 note as SSA about the U.S. military, paramilitary, GSPOC working in coalition to make it look indispensable governing SSA worldwide. The world, U.S. as a partner of the other allies can take over the rise of new generation of stakeholders and global space and centrality of the U.S. military is not something taken for granted. What the U.S. appears to be doing in space is directly to Chinese threats in space, non-descriptive realities of degree, mainly China back away from missions that can devastate us all. China wants to protect space as much as the U.S. does some this by why the Chinese military reach out to the U.S. formally and directing SSA issues an opportunity. The U.S. military can shape and prudent and watchful ways cooperation with China is key to fill U.S. data graphs and space weather prediction, encourage strategic coordination, space after Johnson. 316 benefits one of the U.S. in cooperation, learning Chinese perceived and decision-making, establishing internal Chinese consistency to argue against aggressive Chinese action, threatening cooperative work, getting close to Chinese capabilities that are frequent. Data gaps and models being closed by sharing data exchanges limited to more extensive rise than Americans learn more about Chinese decision-making, foster positive consistencies within China, working cooperatively, enable science to do more with the limited funds for nervous space science applications, space, being able to anticipate solar questions, storm down native satellites, and protect against those effects. Solar flares and inevitable better forecasting is crucial to effectively adapt power grids to geomagnetic storm stone. 15 of the solar storm respect DOT effects of the worldwide power and telecom outages lasting months of space weather mounting forecasting response coordination representative roadmap to a future where a solar storm doesn't fail the amount of starting this on releases a large burst of the CME cause strategy geomagnetic storms that are generate tremendous electrical currents in the atmosphere. Currents from geomagnetic storms can also feed over grids melting from the hydrocarbon distribution centers. The effects of nitrogen water distribution to center could set a CME luffy 4 times larger than the 1989 Quebec outage. Narrowly missed this high time we started to think about how to prepare for monster solar storm super flares can and do a very big aspect of our vulnerabilities. The fact that we have almost on lead time estimation trade force our first notice comes from taking with their satellites. The besties satellites give us now returns a lot of room to improve our forecasting with better solar models, maybe even forecast days or even weeks in advance. Great clocks, cause exchange from IBT11. A world without electricity means where we can dive into our cities around the globe to develop into no chaos, violent, paranormal, power, one there's no power, grab all nuclear power plants, so all nuclear suddenly go into emergency mode, and you need to talk to fuel generator, parts nuclear power from work to every nuclear facility on the planet on time, every time without failure, months on end. This must be done in the middle of total breakdown of civilization, imagine the devastation of 100 plus nuclear power plants all going through the everyone wants to cross the radiation blankets. The planet permeates the topsoil radius, everything that loses delivers the final crushing blow to human civilization. Valid, descriptive theories of the world are essential to emancipatory critique Jones. For to the extent that objective knowledge provides a better understanding of reality, such knowledge is critical ideas or ideas of critical social did not only manifest as critical list of labels of siding with the oppressed with the critique of revealing ideas of objective knowledge constitutes explanatory critique exposing what is wrong dominant ideology because ideas inform social action causally affects ideas cannot be driven to normal commitment to the oppressed must until committed objectivity. False ideas are in the interest of the oppressed. The best way to direct solidarity with the oppressed commitment to objectivity dominant groups that invested into the medifying society philosophical real theory of science and rights and ultra responsible to acknowledge power and substitution presenting the basic values of the commitment to the cause of the oppressed. We should choose between contending ideas and the basis which provides a better account of the objective social reality or centricity cannot be right from normative commitments about becoming out of your centricity rise the commitment to breaking those prevailing knowledge, not only the other who can embrace the critique as responsibility European and American to decolonize our objectivity being seen as epistemological international and honestly to be an African to tell a more accurate history of Europe's role in the making of contemporary Africa.
You good?
Yeah.
What's the 1AC's relationship to politics?
We talked about it.
The 1AC's made a political demand. What's the connection between the evaluation of that political demand and the political?
And I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the
Sure.
political.
What happens if the panel concludes affirmative?
Nothing really.
Nothing really
They
happens.
think the app is a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's a question of education.
I guess, sure.
Cool. Who's Guy in Bluford?
What?
Who is Guy in Bluford?
I don't know.
Who's Robert Lawrence?
I'm not sure.
Who's Bernard Harris?
Also don't know.
Who's Jeanette Epps?
Still don't know.
Who's Charles Bolden?
I don't know.
Who is Stephanie Wilson?
Don't know.
At least tell me you know who Macy Jemison is.
I don't know.
It was then you realized you fucked up. What is space?
Space? I don't know. In the context of the 1AC, it's like, I think it's like 100.
The area
something
beyond
now.
the mesosphere in
Yeah.
the context of outer space.
Alright, if shit goes down in space, who dies?
What?
If shit goes down in space, who
Lamari-
dies?
The Lamari evidence indicates that it opens the salvo to a nuclear attack.
In
What's up,
space?
everyone? A space conflict results in nuclear conflict.
So nuclear wars happening in space kills people on Earth, how?
Well, the nuclear conflict doesn't actually happen in space. The space conflict incentivizes a shift to a nuclear conflict because both sides perceive that that escalation is inevitable, which means they take steps to gain an advantage by escalating first.
That makes sense. Do we have any info that China doesn't have, and does China have any info that we don't have?
In the context of SSA, yes.
And you will defend information sharing between the new nations as being good?
In the context of SSA, yeah. And the TCP.
Sure. Who puts debris up in space?
A variety of countries. Our argument's not really about debris, though.
You were like key to cooperation over debris mitigation.
The McDonogh evidence is really about SSA capabilities, holistically about space weather modeling. Our argument is about solar flares.
Let's talk real quick about this grid collapse card. It says, quote, within 72 hours, most cities around the world will devolve into total chaos, complete with looting, violent crime, and runaway fires. Who are the people in these cities doing the looting, the violent crime?
It could be anybody.
It could be anybody. So we don't know who they are.
Sure.
It's like people.
Our argument is about nuclear power plants. The impact scenario is that those nuclear power plants are not.
But we don't know who these people are. How about this? Better question. I've asked you this question every time we've been negative against you. You better have a good response this time. What does the 1AC do to materially change the conditions of black life?
Our argument is not particular to black people.
Perfect.
We prevent black
We're
people
good.
from
No,
dying.
we're good.
We
We're
prevent
good.
black people from dying in a solar
What
flare.
is it set out as going to be one off?
9.
Okay. So one thing. Is anyone not ready? All right.
You will not get clear into the late evenings, brother. You will not get a speaker award, gain bids, or find your name in the rankings. You will not be able to spread, extend, and double breathe. You will not be able to flip ag after you see the panel, because the revolution will not be fiat. The revolution will not be fiat. There will be no hypothetical enactment of a federal plan to help black folks, because the revolution will not be fiat. There will be no advantage that turns the impact, no 2AC add-on or permutation that separates out the non-competitive parts of the ad. The revolution will not be fiat. The revolution will not be downloaded in a speech doc in Garamond 10.5 or posted to a wiki page to be uploaded 5 minutes before the debate. The revolution will not be found in a verbatim file in a pocket with a hat on. The revolution will not be voted and underlined and highlighted down in blue, yellow, or green. The revolution will not be fiat based on a jump drive or added to the email chain. The revolution will not be a 10-second plan text or framing contention. The revolution will not be a new ad pretending to hear about drone strikes in Pakistan and Syria while ignoring the strikes in Baltimore and Ferguson. Hegemony will not solve nuclear war. Relations will not stop a shootout in the South China Sea or Senkaku Islands. Economic collapse will not be resolved when global warming slowed by green efficiency because the revolution will not be fiat. There is no spillover. Politics will not be ceded to the right and decision-making skills enhanced because Steinberger freely published argumentation and advocacy. HHS and Michigan fellows will not give you a consciousness for $6 grand. Dave Arnett will no longer have the power to determine the fate of debate in late April while simultaneously eliminating black faces from the power of Kentucky round robin. The revolution will not be optimistic providing hope for legal reform. The revolution will not be a Beauchamp 13 piece of evidence saying things are getting better. The revolution will not be fiat. The revolution will not be fiat. There will be no try or die for the affirmative. We will not fiat food to feed the hungry. We will not fiat rent money to brothers and sisters in the hood. Trayvon, Akai, Oscar, Eric, Mike, and Sandra will not be saved from the bullet by the debate panel. The two of y'all will not be able to spin offense off dropped arguments because the revolution will not be buried in line-by-line refutation. The number 4 off the number 5 will not be extended and evaluated. You will not control uniqueness or subsume the impact. Turn the impact will outweigh on magnitude, time frame, or probability. Cross-sex cannot be bonded because we can't bind truth, things on the flow. Objectivity will not replace subjectivity in your post-round decisions. The revolution will not show up air from the 3 o'clock pairing in an up-4 debate to determine seating in the England. There will be no prep sheets or strike cards reminiscent of printed sheets that strike white bodies hard because the revolution will not be fiat. The revolution will not be fiat. Your fantasy of a normative functions will only function normally as fantasy that provided illusions of a revolution that can never be understood, predicted, planned for, or pinpointed. The revolution does not fit into the box of an alternative providing stable advocacy. The revolution is not a link argument that becomes a dissent. pick, absentee statement, or wrong on the ballot, because the revolution cannot be fiat. Tabroom.com cannot post the results of revolution nor put up the bracket any more than Biden can bracket revolutionary results through a system of institutional discrimination. There will be no sovereignty advocates who post on web pages and internet blogs, because the revolution will not be fiat. There will be no new books on the shelves of Barnes and Noble or shipped from Amazon, because the revolution will not be fiat. Learning about the government will not be a good idea once the government decides it's a good idea to learn how to get rid of you. There will be no hope, faith, belief, or yes we can. The revolution will not be fiat. There will be no theory arguments to argue against how we theorize the coherence of humanity to justify an inhumane reality. There can be no flinching as we animalize paradigms from just an existence that is predicated on the social death of our bodies. The revolution cannot be fiat if it allows a disregard to the blatant ethics of immorality and the unnamed political system of white supremacy. The revolution should not be fiat when considering the historicity of native alienation. The revolution could not be fiat when factoring in the historicity of gratuitous violence. The revolution challenges fiat through the historicity of black and a consciousness that self-awakens. The revolution will not decide to debate on limited predictable ground to ensure competitive equity. The revolution will not set rules to the game, because there are rules to the game when we revolt in these streets. The revolution will not be fiat in line for hypothetical dreams to produce utopian nightmares that 12% of the population face daily. Nuclear war will not be between nations as the starving people die of lack of health care from dreaded disease, because we cheer because it provides a new position to break at the end of the year. Death will not tidy up uniqueness on a dissent. Suffering will not be the impact card, and black pain will not be the clever add-on that escapes the obfuscated empathy seeping from horrendous decisions that leaves white debaters on the floors of hotel rooms watching rounds and could be participating in. The revolution will not be fiat. The revolution will not be fiat. Will not be fiat. Not be fiat. The revolution will be formed. Democratic principles leave black people wandering and searching for justice in a system where even racial justice is just another charitable enterprise that's called Junior. In 2K16, the white supremacy stood in the way of democracy in this country never heard the voice of America pressuring the dreams of the nation's darkest cities and money and increases racial justice, racial equality, and loose expression for improvement, charitable enterprises and parties by which white people do good for black people that is not equality, value that racial happens to racial equality, and how white and black people to white racial justice in this country. That's Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, and so many others have an illusion that we might have about a post-racial America. White people suffer tremendously, black communities have been devastated. White people wanted more than anything was hope and sense of possibility to think of themselves for the world, for the white people. There was hope was always coming to that happiness of realism. The reality is that very little change in this country. Things have gotten worse. We've been asked to trust some leader in the back of the room without any mechanism of accountability to politics and the democratic process in black communities, democracy and black culture, reimagining of black politics and a reimagining of American democracy. Both begin with local grassroots organizing and movements. They have held free political imagination from romance by calling attention to all hell breaking loose around us and supposing an illusion of accepting the heart of the nation and black the entire concrete effects of persistent racial inequality, racial arms are part of the American idea. We are and what we do in this society's hall always needs our democratic principles do not exist and is separate apart from our national commitment to white supremacy, democracy, and black emergencies that have been unflinching encountered with the nation trees, prison cells, foreclosed, homes, young men and women gunned down by police and other places where hope and when I died. Our choice now is we leave behind the confidence of men and their false hopes to wake up and give everything to achieve our country to remain asleep as America burns. And the value gap is what masks the inadequacy of democracy without reconciling the fundamental gap. The task of 180 is that nearly useless to black America that's called Junior. In 2016, the question of black America should the value gap no matter how much progress we've made. No white people always have value more than others. The value gap is more in our national DNA that is a crucial moment in our nation's history. White people sort of the value gap and limited this level of change. The ideas of American Revolution were reconciled with the institution of slavery, naturalization, not going on. White person who attains institutions of good war, safety, and the breakfast of reconstruction image, genuine multiracial democracy without that Jim Crow took over the South Convention, our convict leasing emerged across from law and order and reverse racism. Michael, though the nation's white people march on the streets by each of these moments, racial progress represents a profound change in the country, but with each successive change, always limited by the underlying belief that white supremacy or supremacy of white people believe that adjusted and adapted to new conditions. With each step forward, equally powerful forces pull the nation back in the direction of the status quo middle has changed in America with regard to race. And unless our actions are hyper-specific to black communities and implementation, we remain willfully ignorant, just like they want to see this called Junior. In 2K16, much of what happens in black America is not a matter of natural condition unless it threatens people who really matter. This is the price of invincibility and then public institutions many black communities reinforce the belief that certain populations, certain black people are disposable, racial on the side of society, and turning back on the poor black poor people. This is a difference to the poor people, while white Americans be willfully ignorant. The result has been deprivatization of the white misery here. Is the feeling that black people are disposable and becomes concrete. We should be better than this, but it seems that no matter what we do, what happens to us African Americans, we seem to be only in a certain way at a certain time. Either our suffering has to be invisible or that suffering has to become entirely familiar. This is one way we deal with race and medicine, the country will bind us any other portions of national morality, and the alternative is democracy and black and disavow the 26 political tools in favor of new envisioning of engaging politics through revolutionary value that's called junior. In 2016, the Negroes are back to refer to the categories that set the limits of our lives. In 2018, which America, we are trying to engaging my politics will break. These short that categorization, we have to break loose from the string jacket, break second African Americans living in hierarchies. Imagine this country that will walk to our best in business as usual in the American politics revolution. How value will change the curve, the station, all instead of reimagining, reinvigorated by politics, and plan by having fighting chance, pressing over our communities and nations, for us to come out, the work of having democracy without the purge of conviction, American democracy, and us will describe the attached home, dare to imagine a new creation, a different way, being in the world first. We must turn our backs and we do so more just for current society with a revolutionary value, continue rational movement, national ongoing, bring action to we create a new circle for America in this nation, for the nation.
Ready?
Yep.
1 second.
What is the reason that the U.S. increasing TCBMs with China is bad?
Our question is more framed around your conception of fiat and how we create revolutions within the debate space and within the broader community, and having plans that are hyper-specific to helping Black communities within the status quo. Because anything that ignores that perpetuates the value gap and discrimination continues.
So we'll tell you what's wrong with TCBMs when you can tell us who Guy and Bluford is, or who Mae Jemison is.
Okay, sure, but as of the one and see, there's not a reason.
There is, you just
Yeah.
don't know it.
That's
Okay.
why we're asking.
Right, the
That's
1NC stance was that the framing of the 1NC is detrimental for Black people for all of the reasons listed for why the revolution should not be fiat. The revolution is something that we perform for Black people within the debate space, like we did in the 1NC.
Why can we not?
Our argument is precisely that your form of education is ignorant of certain principles because of these racial habits within your form of democracy, which is why you cannot answer to me who Guy and Bluford or Mae Jemison is. Our argument is that's the inherent issue with the 1NC is your conception.
What is the reason that we cannot perform the revolution and then also talk about policies?
Well, it's not just talking about policies. The conception of fiat and fiating certain hypothetical action by governmental means that ignore the way in which we should perform within the debate spaces and perform advocacies that push forward politics for Black people. Reimagining democracy in Black is an integrated politics that says we some people is the better.
What is the reason that discussions about the state preclude discussions about the
Right. Once again, it's not discussions with the state are bad. It's not our argument. We should reimagine the state. That's what democracy in Black calls for: a reimagination of reinvigorating Black politics.
And why is that
says
different
we should
from
start
fiat?
because that's a top-down implementation of the 1NC. We're saying grassroots organization is what allows democracy in Black to happen. That's bottom
And
up.
what about the 1AC precluded like grassroots
You're
organizations?
top-down, and you don't have a hyper-specific plan to help Black folks.
Plus, you can never tell us you're for the grassroots if you, again, cannot name
Right.
a single.
Like all the examples, the names and initials given in the 1AC just proves that if you even try to make a permutation on this ball, how disingenuous that is in the first place. Because you don't care about Black folks when it has nothing to do with your performance. You only care about the winning or performing and all this other thing. You're saying that when that happens, that reinforces the value gap that perpetuates discrimination against Black bodies.
Sure. Can the state take actions that are top down that are good?
I mean, depends on what you define
I
as
suppose-
good.
I
What
suppose-
you define as good.
I suppose, let me rephrase that. Are all state actions inherently top down?
Depends on what you define as state.
The USFG.
Depends on how you define the USFG. Like we're saying,
The
democracy in
government
Black calls for reimagination of how the USFG and the state functions in totality, saying that the state should allow grassroots activism to happen and the USFG to function more as a collective humanity against white supremacy.
And Connor, it's not even necessarily top-down itself is bad. We think it is, but
Right.
also that your advocacy of top-down within debate is what perpetuates these racial values.
Right, this is key
Why?
because even if you say that progress has happened through top-down, the value gap is what Eddie Glaude says persists. Even if we have come 100 years and made progress, white people progress even further, so the value gap between those bodies still exists, which means you don't do anything for black people.
Sure.
Okay, one sec, we're gonna start.
Give me one more.
Did you say it's consent?
But my Wi-Fi is like really slow, so it's like loading the thing.
All right, no worries.
Okay, yeah. I'm just gonna say
I don't know where they went.
It's almost like there are a lot of people in there.
okay, order's gonna be the Falcon damage and then the
Okay. What do you need to-
Miscalculation trying to us perceive each other's militarization space as a graphic causing circle arms race and miscalculation of playing clarifies these parties' long-term intentions for dual use technology which leads to mutual de-escalation, decay, fiat is good. The idea of reimagining democracy is the same thing as fiat because it allows us to criticize the state, allowing for the testing idea is critical to class, which is the only way to get portable skills for debate whether or not they're involved in the state or whether or not the state or rather than not the state or not basing things on whether or not we know certain people, etc. is clearly an important goal, but not something that clashes with the app. How they could have run this against any single app, which demonstrates that they're just obfuscating a clash framework with the app against the alternative to reduce the problems outlined because for fair discourse and equal burden of solvency for both teams is about our prescriptive education because we should wait institutions they cross-access framework. We can't tell you what the link is until you meet our framework is the exact not reciprocal burden of proof that we talked about. We're not the lower state affirmation making demands on the state challenges legitimacy as human intent making such demands does not mean work within the state of reaffirmation legitimacy demands are based on the outside of political organizing the question implementation of this specific method of the state all consequential legitimacy of the state right highlighting inconsistent method of review because the scholarship will defend asymmetric scenario pending imagining features unanticipated by policymakers breaks down cognitive bias or scripting, that's the pharma evidence, that's task force utilization of China and the security dilemma. Yes, debates of the cause change out around the pharma evidence indicates that scenario planning like the app should be distinct from actual process of decision making, but is rather a way to evaluate different potential scenarios. The neg does not access spot of debate either, which means that you should be very stringent on the basis of points objectivity explaining the world through multiple causal scenarios to the curve to critique mystification is a tool of the oppressive to create Eurocentric violence as the Jones evidence that they're objectively miscalculation coming out justifies voting out these points consequences must be evaluated as Jones if the team of politics appears path of transformation they were assisting the identity policy working for the other but the turmoil in the least to me a result of politics and resents or an everyone also know available to regular priorities for development diplomacy alliances the more they such trusted does not mean for after the case that his evaluation made or my grant or crimes over super judgment for this reason operation board of feasible nature for they cannot even know around without reason without the great political council with more action methods understanding what's happening with the interest particular things that the particular political decision maybe other than X amount of work the permutation and great performance and enforce the app is a good policy. There's no reason that resolutions to ask for the 1 and C just because to be cancel out the round is to create social change and is there which should debate either creates net change, which means that it's possible to endorse both frameworks simultaneously. The link debate the idea that we're not explicitly focused on anti-blackness functionally becomes a linkable mission, which is bad because it forces us to touch briefly on every issue and is infinitely aggressive for the active permutation on the K overcomes all this because it allows us to incorporate the radical models of education while still coming to the conclusion the app's implementation is a good idea. Knowing who important people are is a good goal, but shouldn't be the basis for the ballot because it's arbitrary. They could have picked any number of people, and even the most seasoned black scholars wouldn't know every single person. It's an expert to point out why the app is bad, not just hold the app to knowing or not know something before the round of state debate. Law concludes app demand on the demand from the government for reforming a meaningful difference between these attitudes to ensure the world stays standards lab in 16. Attitudes are static today. The world is lived should be confined to the home. The movement for oppression, the government has laws to help change the list of laws. We're creating new patterns of interaction between all stations of the safety net for the foreign world doesn't happen because people will lose some attribute and racial habits are shaped by our government and society. Us as a nation, the creative and address we say that those people follow that the conservative change of when they enact policies such as the right change or government to the government health agenda is living way to go. Away averting the racial habits and the population are disposable and comprehensive. A government responsible for homes the private interests of the government only translating grassroots movements into explicit change into the state power can create viable electoral response to the ascendancy of Trump climate movements. Other movements must explicitly break the representational link between populist interests and the latest runoff. It is up to the Trump full frontal attack on climate threat civilization as we know with the organizers. All states and countries protests must be directed to translate grassroots leadership into governing power of the planet. Can we without climate movement needs to make sure that the future Trump in 2020 knowing that won't be necessarily be another such Democrats and to offer friendly measures to several climate should be the Democratic Party that chooses comprehensive free out the issue had to be the party doing we need to the populism and climate change are waiting to change the local state policy build them meant to define democratic policy and the real climate change to consider only cause the planet to assume the problems that climate activism we are pressing having individuals take part like climate change below for future giving where people is the state of climate change progression democrats line behind the progressive driving which is what between the party and the GOP attracting diverse supporters and this whether the image of environmental policy when the party and the GOP and the Democratic Party will accept for more independent politics more credit independent politics the reform is effective and to bring revolutionary change closer rather than pushing it with Donato in mind. CL is pretty confused about the critique of the imperialistic around the state of the critique of federal foundation of interpretive events affecting the report. Or it goes for some critique and housing sometimes new positions of revolution or maybe were to put the number of relevant of the zombie march on the for academic working more around this fact. Of the revolution said the possibility of revolutionary with a certain defeat on the revolution to me. Revolutionary change was model for report that is completely with some way of the uptake for further on the scholars. Critique of the historical reform is possibilities in the class of the question whether change when it comes to what we want material. Against a real nihilism reapplies Brandon Johnson. In 16 of view of the emphasize racial conflicts and black politics and the fatalistic use of political possibilities and research. These are the interracial of the interracial organization also fear to secure black faith, the rate of separate working and work together like the ancient right for living trying to get to remain civil times and Charles to expand labor civil rights together diverse politics creating social justice the blackness is the organization of black racism and citizens principles of principles using mobilization such running against one another the campaign strategy the new movements against the different contradictions in society elections equality the contemporary anti-race and also said this to continue to society this follow the anti-race liberals as well as the contemporary and conservative for the trade for public currencies and institutions society works renewable project business made the public sector firm black workers the hope is good contingency shapes blackness in civil society and civil working at 15 the workers that are running identity project race and not to hear the world that we anti-blackness this project not to be complained we hate we also follow by 75 years of people who never been dominated the problems that the partnership has with other residents of our democratic world where the loss of the generation must have other rich development levels that helps we commit the year forgetting those systems and their ancestors the way we can talk about this as a human system you don't think so by back to every ancestor is completely you're running this way system is an actually closing out do you have to have an effective system to make people mentally to be their own prisoners the anti-blackness is actually gonna get it mainstream politics is a monolithic. Trump and the GOP's control over the government is fragile for willing to take media institutions to hold back the negative director activist anger to non-electoral social movements which dissipates the movement by absolutely critical of the emergence of tangible goals and targets by which government movements can be measured as brokerage. In September, government is also self until by our opinion, conservation of the government wants to be that the reality of the left and no opportunity for political power separate for that's the idea that face of opportunity the right to because the left and the Trump and the Republican power ability who into the text here also support democratic reforms and future the back within the major public over all the impulses to reach our market for the weaknesses. The right question for within the momentum to criticism left to difficulty carving out place for the knowledge for also social maybe the tendencies to offer as a carved again the right directives of the admission the inability to trust the state power to political control and celebration the right action in the state of rather dynamic opposites in the militancy anti-imperial project and virtually playing sorting against the institutional authority right reaction to less immediately means the individual political action is less self-contained exercise we call it versus many exercises over agencies and their cooperation sounds looks like the usual measure of systems on the road which is why it's compatible with the resignation fair test do not have the ongoing commitment that our party politics does also the current
Actually, before we start questions, can I get water?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How is that yeah. If you see this junk.
I'm ready with all
You good? Alright, so I'm gonna start with this link of admission argument.
Yeah.
Law says, I'm gonna read this from the 1 and C. Much of what happens in Black America is not a matter of national concern, unless of course it threatens people who really matter. And then later in the card he says, either our suffering has to be invisible, or that suffering has to be entirely familiar. Somebody has to call us a nigga, somebody has to shoot us down, and it's a 12-year-old child, or someone has to massacre 9 black people in the church to remind us of the ugliness in our past and present. Why isn't that link of admission rhetoric just a stronger link to what our argument is?
It's not necessarily, the argument is not that like not talking about black issues is bad, rather it's just that you didn't talk about X is not a compelling argument.
No. Our argument is you didn't talk about X. Our argument is that you didn't focus on X, but affording your politics. Why isn't that strengthening the link to our argument?
Our argument is the characterization of the app is it only matters because white people are dying, etc. It isn't accurate because
It's not our argument.
That's the argument that the Glad app is in. The argument is rather that everybody dying is bad. That's
so all lives matter. Okay.
It's not
So
all
Eddie
lives
Gauze,
That is an inaccurate characterization
Eddie-
of the. No, you made an argument. I'm answering. That's an
I have a
inaccurate
question, though.
characterization of the
Process.
affirmative. Like it is. Sure.
All
Go
right, can I
ahead.
ask a question? Eddie Gauze is literally writing a whole book about reimagining democracy in
Yes.
Black and the value gap that perpetuates through how we view government. How does that flow out?
Yeah, the conclusion of the Clouds book, which we cut,
Yeah.
says that we need to make more concrete. No, this is the actual conclusion.
Right.
Means that says that we need to make more concrete demands on the government.
Right, and he says
in
that
order to
any,
alleviate
yes,
racial.
yes, and that's clear. I'm glad you brought that up because
How-
he says this will not emerge out of any of the political parties that exist now, and only through a reimagination of how we view democracy in Black.
Sure.
How does that flow out?
Yeah, so that combined with the Newman evidence means that the interpretation of fiat as a demand on the state, rather than like, like Trump should do X,
Yeah,
or like
that's-
an affirmation of the Trump administration,
that's
that's
fine.
what that critique is responsible to.
You
not the
said
government.
material gains are real, but nihilism prevents that. How are we nihilism?
The removal from political system, Johnson specifically.
How are we removing ourselves from political
You
system?
said grassroots movements as opposed
Yes.
to top-down movements?
Yes, no. We're reimagining democracy in Black, so the entire system of how the USFG functions operates at a level from grassroots.
Yeah,
to
sure, I agree that you're not like total pessimism, rather it's
And why is
the-
this argument relevant?
I'm answering your question, rather than functioning of the alternative, rather than engaging in the state.
But it is the state. We reimagine how the state
No,
functions.
dude, you're not letting me answer your question, come on. It's like, rather than endorsing an alternative in which we just reimagine things and expect them to pop into existence, rather we should have concrete methods to alleviate those problems that exist.
Right. Why isn't a concrete method reimagining democracy in Black, i.e. reflecting the
I mean,
combined boys, William Murphy, Vicky Gardner?
that's your burden to prove that there were specific steps,
I'm just wondering how that was nihilism. Also, how is the 1 and C not hopeful in a new vision of democracy?
I mean,
That's
it
a whole
is by definition, rather it's the method that you take to actualize those things.
Does the affirmative challenge the value gap?
Sorry, what?
Does the affirmative challenge the value gap?
Yeah.
How?
All the Johnson card and the Black ones all answer that.
Yeah.
We have what, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Start, bro.
Huh? People get drama. Can you have them bring like a side dish for me? Oh, yeah. He's sleeping right now. Oh, okay. So when he texts me, the turn. Well, the tournament, Scott is gonna bring me something, but it's gonna take like half an hour.
Stop rep 654. Oh, just drop me. It's always been a story.
I thought you were like shake the whole thing around.
My parents never let me get ADHD because I can't stay still.
Why?
Not the thing that you were just doing.
You're the thing.
Yeah, like
You should send this card. Yeah, come on. Y'all are the first people that make me read cards on speech.
Honored.
I'm just not used to reading cards. True.
There's some people like that. No, there's some people like I shouldn't have liked that because I'm just David is one of those people who like he's just smart to do anything, and like the fact that he's doing everything means that he's I wish someone would just tell me that the reason I don't do anything with my life is because I'm too smart not to. You're smart to do things. Probably in the same time. I could try to do something. But you would just think by not doing anything. You should still like write something and then like.
So for the order, I think we all know. It'll be K overview. Preferably new sheet unless you switch it down. And then K straight down to
and then K proper.
yes, overview K proper. And I'll like signpost on the
For a second, I was like, so case. I was.
Oh, you're right actually. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we're gonna go to case, then the K overview, then straight down to K.
Okay, so case, new page. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone not ready? Countermeter, if you had a loser argument for us in cross-sex means you confirm away the entirety of the affirmative. That's going to be explained more when we talk about the framework portion of the one in our go to the KO view. Adding law as a grassroots politician, his life work surrounding exposing the inadequacies of top-down policy. Now little it does for the black community's own work includes teaching and working with bottom-up political solutions to materially reduce the value gap that separates all black America. Our argument is simple.
there's a value gap in democracy where our policies fundamentally play into a gap where we value white life or black life, and the formulation of policy starts with advancing policies that include black people that are targeted around threats to white life rather than focusing exclusively on reducing those gaps. These are what we call racial habits, whereby what we do and how we act is a constant perfection of a gap of value, how our policy is simply inadequate. During the Great Black Depression, millions of black people lost their jobs and were capitulated into poverty while our policy of recourse started with white communities. Think of it this way: white people had a 100-meter head start in a running race over black people, but you stop a bomb from killing all the runners. Black people still 100 meters behind. McDonogh JN is committed to doing the most we can to forward radical advocacy, and at the TOC, we have a unique opportunity to make a strong statement to the community that advocacy should treat blackness as a forethought rather than an afterthought. We think policy should be cultivated through critical conscience that starts from the bottom up rather than the top down, which we think is the best form of democracy. Democracy in black rejects starting with NASA. This is why the alternative is an endorsement of democracy in black and new, envisioning about politics operates by reconciling issues of the black community from the bottom up. The alternative is a revolution of value. By voting negative, you fundamentally align yourself with a value statement that says it's not the right time to do the 1AC because black communities are suffering and we need to value politics from the bottom up first. Voting negative means that it makes a statement that we can value federal engagement policies until we value black people. Go to the line by line, they make a bunch of fiat good and framework arguments, leave some space on the flow. That's going to be the one in our day. Say never specify the link. Correct, we performed the link when we asked you who the people in the during cross-sex were, and you weren't able to define that, which indicates the form of the value gap that you embody in your politics because you don't have that critical consciousness to understand the way in which your policies are able to affect or materially implicate black people. I.e. in cross-sex, when I asked you what does the plan do for black people, you said nothing, which is why you're going to lose to us on the negative again. They say permutation is performance plus the app. I'll do the permutation debate here. They cannot make a permutation if they didn't know who the black astronauts I listed are because there's a direct link to their value gap and racial habits that proves the exclusivity of the alternative in the app because we're a rejection of their performance of ignorance. You can't endorse our performance with their app because our performance criticizes the type of policymakers they create, which means anything affirmed by the app should be rejected. If you think both can be done, you default negative because we have a better envisioning of democracy that would pass the plan. And first of all, is the permutation either links or except for the alternative, which is a rejection of the affirmative model of fiat-based engagement, severing the money's here in discourse. We also have the links to their education model being bad, attained by God's value gap, which means any logical form of permutation would have to sever out of their education claim severance as a voter makes the 1AC a moving target that's voted for absolute seals because we never learned to defend anything unconditionally. That's the most portable debate. In fact, that's voted for fairness in education. Second is the permutation is the exact kind of compromise politics we're critiquing. This is a prime example of interest convergence. White fluidity. White people only do things that are reactionary when it benefits themselves too. Three-fifths of compromise proves the white people only reform the law made black people count as three-fifths the person in order to bolster their political standing or win the voting rights act pass reaction. Say I'm sorry for treating you less than human, but today we still see black people turn away from polls because of voter ID rights. If the affirmative saying I'm sorry for being anti-black, but the permutation solved, it doesn't. There's a link to white fluidity, anti-blackness. The affirmative. This is no way affirming about ID, but we call them anti-black. They make a permutation, also adding things to the plan, arbitrarily shift division, ground acts in the literature fails to prove the plan textual reason to vote negative on fairness. Third is if the permutation solves, you can keep the alternative for us and vote negative on case turn. We don't need to win an alternative, just need to win a risk of a link that proves the act's conception of democracy or fiat is not intellectually productive. This also means all the links are disastrous to the permutation, which I'll do in a minute. If we win a risk of a link to the educational model bet, then you have to reject the permutation. The permutation gets solved because the 1AC can advocate an example of traditional policy making within modernity while critiquing fiat. Leave a little bit of space here because I might get back to that. They say link debate is just a link of omission. Not true. I'll do that here. A couple link arguments. First of all, black people have historically been excluded from the realm of space and indicating racial habits of space engagement. Hidden figures proves that people are historically excluded and that white people engage in spending millions on producing a movie to expose why NASA is good for black people rather than investing in black community space. Cooperation also supports a form of respectability. Black people are only valued insofar as they're the respectable Negro like Neil deGrasse Tyson. The whole premise of space is contingent upon a value gap, i.e. the way in which they able to formulate what's valuable and not. Second is the fact that they don't even know a single one of the black astronauts I listed in cross-sex proves that they perpetuate this value gap. Their advocacy and education is tainted by ignorance, which justifies a rejection of their model in defense of their education. Third is advocacy of human space exploration reflects nostalgia for white male oppression in the 1950s. Conservatism that's 115 at Paul before the long existential carbon grade, so along with hopes of resurrection of future intermediate day when the continent will be open in space. Advocate design the trope represents a significant element of the myth of all of incarceration trope, the great national vision of the future sparks considerable nostalgia for the exciting experience of astronauts walking the moon, reaching for the moon, representing spiritual quest, purification, humanity search, absolves immunity, Apollo representing the next human, second human evolution carried out with the Darwinian survival of the fittest, overturn Apollo, nostalgia harkens back to the era of 1950s in which social order rules all seem in place. Naturalist, the pre-great society pre social reformation era white men oversaw America, leave it to the beaver type of existence white women that were docile, help these ethnic race relation favoring American born whites all into the place in the system mark the card system, and they say that we need to prove on the alphabet. First of all, it's about your performance too. That informs your type of policymakers because if we're able to win that the form of policymakers that they employ have this kind of value gap, then that means that even if the app is a good idea, that their model love how they endorse it is something that should be rejected. Voting Neg has a risk that they're more informed in the future because they lose, and next time they go out and actually understand who the people we ask are. They say blood flows out. First of all, he says the material demands happen from the grassroots. So yes, he does say the material demands happen, but it has to happen from the grassroots, which indicates their whole focus on democracy because it starts from the top down. Glad would definitely go negative the second they can't name any of the people we named. And also, Glad is literally writing a book called Democracy in Black. He's saying that the government must be remade to meet the challenges of current day. Substantive change will not come out of the beltway of plain text. We must challenge the status quo of democratic awakening and reimagining democracy in Black. Glad in 16 government can help us go a long way towards uprooting rich habits of the policy. We have to change the terms of political debate. Something dramatic has happened. American democracy be remade. The remake of America not happening inside the beltway. Too many. There have been investments in such a more robust idea of government will not emerge from the current political party. Substantive change will have to come from us and take a full-blown democratic awakening to enact this resolution. Make sure to read that card. They say must translate grassroots movement into state and climate change. First of all, they do, which is the entire premise of the law card I just read, is that grassroots debate do end up skilling up. And second of all, climate is not the focus on the debate. Probably something that's distracting away. They say reformism is good. First of all, the only good reform is the grassroots. Their own cards only cite examples of reforms that happen from the grassroots, which proves like this argument that the only type of racial reforms happen from the grassroots, which is why you vote for the alternative. And also, their reform thesis is flawed because it doesn't take into account the fact that different people start from different places. This is the running race example I made on the OV. They say nihilism reifies the right, but first of all, that's not us. You can put away your Wilderson blocks. We're not nihilism. We're a optimistic call towards a new form of democracy. Second of all, this also cites the civil rights movement, which is bottom-up advocacy. Turns your whole conception of democracy. They make a bunch of good arguments. You can put, they read this contingency Gordon card. Put away your 18 black people filed this, and not us. We are an embracement of hope. And the second of all is that the fact that, so we'll concede that argument, and the fact that they're reading 18 Wilderson demonstrates how their policymakers are critically uninformed about black issues, which means voting for them means they go out into the real world and end up passing plans without being able to take into account the way in which material advocacy is able to implicate different people. They say mainstream politics is not monolithic. Yes, it is. Glad indicates matters concerning black people don't matter. I.e. how they don't know the names. Our form of politics is better because it starts from a position of being able to recognize these different forms of inequalities within democracy, to be able to understand how we as people should be able to move forward and to be able to inform democracy. This is largely named out of their form of democracy and their form of policymakers, because if we're able to win a risk of an argument that their form of policymakers are critically uninformed, that turns their education part of the project into is a reason why you should default to the alternative over the affirmative, even if you think the affirmative is a good idea. Go back to the permutation. Actually, let's make a couple of disads. Here are some disads. First is white fluidity. Disad the permutation demonstrates how white folks and whiteness can change representation to maintain authority and silence voices of the oppressed. Second is commodification. Disad the permutation restructures the representation of the one and C such that the permutation advances an anti-black optic and way of viewing the world, resulting in commodification of blackness for power, pleasure, and profit for white folks like themselves. This alone should be a reason to reject them, i.e. the same way that movies like Hidden Figure are able to manipulate the power, pleasure, and profit while being able to expose this myth that NASA is good for black people, which is also a linked argument as to how their conception of different forms of politics is bad, because the way that they advance myth of international cooperation, space, challenge to oppression, conceal the real material division between the powerful and the oppressed. Even if they transform state politics, it would only result in a new regime of oppression. I don't have enough time, so that's a statement of fact.
Sounds good. Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
The new cloud evidence says that we have to have new demand policy in order to reimagine democracy. What demands do we have to make in order to restructure?
Grassroots demands, one that are critically informed in terms of having that perspective that doesn't start from racial habits.
Okay, I understand the form of those demands, but what is the content?
Not valuing the racial value gap, starting from a position where black life matters, i.e. knowing the people you think you represent.
So does that mean like social welfare? Does that mean like...
If it starts from the bottom up and it's critically informed, we think that is a good form of demand.
How do you know what is critically informed and what is not?
Well, that's the process of the debate. You have presented an intellectual idea, we have to prove that it is not critically informed.
So if we win, there's no link, it's critically informed.
You said what?
If there's no link to the content of the app, do we win that it's critically informed?
No, because we made arguments about the performance of the app implicates the type of
sure,
policy
but the
makers
content. I get the form versus content distinction, but the content of the app is critically informed if you do not want to link to the substance of the app.
Theoretically, but we do have a link to the content.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, the link evidence about Apollo, I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
I don't know either.
Okay, glad we're on the same page.
I started with L and just said it kind of
Sure. It's specifically about Apollo.
Correct.
And says that how is that the app?
Sure. It's saying that during the resurgence of the Apollo missions, people created a nostalgia back to those 1950s eras of U.S. like different forms of prominence and different forms of societal oppression that structured that. We're saying, let me finish. We're saying that your call to envision this new form of space politics reverts back to that same nostalgia of a time where we did have things like the hidden figure scenario happen.
Okay, why is giving away military data to China an attempt to like nostalgia back to U.S. leadership?
Well, it's playing with the whole notion of information exchange in space, which is our argument about how when you have different forms of information exchange in space. Why are you shaking your head?
Because your card's not about that. But that's fine.
I agree
It's
the card's not
specifically-
about that. The
yeah.
analogy is about the way that you approach information sharing in space. I agree.
Okay, that's fine. The Lanius evidence is also specifically about like walking on the moon and like the figure of like white dude conquering the moon. Why is that the app?
That's the example of the nostalgia that drives to information sharing in space. Revert back to our idea is the whole conception of space as this new frontier of space as a place in which we can have actions refers back to when actions in society were limited for people, but exclusive to those white people who could go up in space and act.
Your overview, we start with the rejection of NASA. The plan is not NASA. Did you just like name a random space agency and say that that was like, I don't get it.
It's a joke.
Okay.
It sounds cool. It's edgy.
Okay, sounds good.
Alright, that's another card. It's going to be kind of the framing and portion of the performance going
Actually, I said don't start with massive. I mean massive.
Fair.
Yeah.
Anyone not ready?
Just give me a sec because I feel like, okay, so I saved a lot of space, but if this is going to be the subject of a whole webinar, maybe not enough.
What's that? Did you do it already?
No, but like, I'm just going to, I assume it's just like what you said.
It's different.
You said you were going to do all this stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, like the same
Yeah,
speech. I was like,
Yeah,
No, I'm aware of that.
you're going to say the same thing.
Do it again.
Wait, so just to clarify, it's just like the good portion of scenario planning, et cetera, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The top of what
And
we
the whole
didn't cover. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to...
You might just want to separate. I don't know.
It's so much easier to decide debates when you have the arguments lined up next to each other. You guys
I'm always.
Wait, I wasn't really know.
Should I have said leave a craft in the space?
I'm sure would have been a difference.
5 minutes of space.
I think maybe saying it before you're.
Okay, let's skip it.
Is anyone not ready?
Our performance at the top of the one they see play on Gil Scott Harris phone. The revolution will not be televised, exposing the limitations of Fiat in the face of the body government status quo and finding laboratory methods for the black body. Scott here to over the start back and echo to the black power group in the last poets in Africa anticipated hip hop nearly a decade on pieces of man. He sang about last 80 day John and John Coltrane and the painted a picture of junkie life and homeless where the hatred is many. Read the poem as a comment on government power play in there. Like to so popularize the concept of revolution inherent and clarify that it was intended as an ironic comment on change, having to begin with an individual's mind and the heart of the true revolution happens in places where you simply won't able to broadcast. We continue this run of thought. We say that the revolution happens at the level of performance in this space, exposing the limitations of Fiat when addressing the gap and violence against white bodies in the status quo. Your bound revolves around who best performed this form of democracy and democracy back to address the value gap and the status quo. This means that a hyper-specific grassroots movement that challenges language discrimination currently happens is key. Their framework debate arguments comes down to how we as intellectual student can formulate education and challenge the value gap that permeates American democracy. Nothing we do in this spirit not changes any bearing on the political world. This means that they cannot weigh cases as justification to vote affirmative. We say that there will be no hypothetical action that will help black folks because the revolution will not be Fiat. This is a clear negative presumption argument that the goes conceded. Everything we do in this debate space helps shape who we are as citizens in the fudging democracy and our defense and framing revolves around using this space as a form of revolution, not through Fiat but performance. There's the speech document isn't revolutionary, but the one that he was our reimagination and performance of democracy and black allows us to challenge the value gap that permeates our discourse to the 10-second plan that doesn't help black folk. And we say that there will be no advantage that turns to impact or permutation that serves out of the affirmative because these forms of revolution don't save black folk. We will not Fiat not food to feed the hungry. We will not be able to bring money to the brothers and sisters in the hood, but we will reform our new vision of democracy. When we say that there will be no advantage that turns the impact notes, we see add on our permutation of that are not competitive parts of the app because the revolution not be feared. We are saying that even if they wanted the plan results to impact this debate is only about the performance that's produced through education and the one that's a method to reimagine democracy and the function of the status quo. This is a concrete method. People like the boys embracing the radical reimagination being traveled to China and operated as a diplomat to say this is the work is won by black militants Robert F. and Mabel Williams, the work of Vicky Garvin and William Worthy that the affirmative ignores. This is not a link of a mission, but rather a link of a commission committing to ignoring racial categories that sustain the value of system white supremacy that's control. In 97, violent privilege operation with focus on nonsense that announce running by our key political tools for protecting white people to maintain the myth of meritocracy nonsense, active, not passive, the absence of speech, and white is residence in our discussion, not to be white is actually nor the nonsense and white hierarchical social society that speech now. Prefer our counter-interpretation. You should be critical and central task of evaluating the best and performance strategy to endorse or challenge the value gap. Our model of the interest of the affirmative can uphold a descriptive model that is in circumvent how we can use the spaces of revolutionaries and perform our methods to adjust the value gap during here, evaluating which speech had the best performance to challenge the system of disproportionate effects black lives. In the test we meet our framework via the late debate when we swells, the way in which the affirmative actively upholds the value gap that their performance on the planet is not hyper-specific to black folks. Black folks, even if when their framework you still vote negative because the case of procedural issue, meaning that as a judge you should ultimately want yourself away from the federal government. Ethical orientation is a power question because they have to justify their political notion of that USC action before you advocating the passing of the plan. These links were read and explained in the 20. Now they say that fiat is good because it also challenges the state creates clash, education challenging legitimacy of the state scenario, planning all of the traditional arguments but means nothing in the face of the context of the performance. All we want to see one is that clashes will matter in the face of white supremacy and the value gap, even if they believe that their conception of fiat is key. We critique it and declare voting each other in the wrong because the negative because their conception of fiat never ain't out of form of revolution that could be performed too. We don't prevent goal-oriented politics. Democracy and black is the goal. Peace evidence is on point. He says that democracy and black calls for reimagining politics and remaking of American democracy. Those who are not together, both being with local grassroots and organizing and movements. The fact that they have the audacity to say that the affirmative challenges the legitimacy of the state is a form of white ignorance that should be performed. It's not about challenging the current legitimacy of state, but rather challenging how we view the state in general. Once again, this is another link to the value gap because unless something revolutionary, ridiculous happens like the killing of Tamir Rice or shooting of 9 black people in a church, black Pacific politics are really necessary. This is what perpetuates the value gap. They're linking even more. Their far evidence is literally the worst evidence that they could write in this strong scenario planning through fiat is what we critique in the first place. Once again, there is no spillover. Politics will not be seated to the right and decision-making skills enhanced because it's not freely published in argumentation advocacy. Now they say that Neg doesn't spill over and they say this is a piece of Barman evidence. This is a laughable answer to this performance. We don't have to claim to over. This was the explanation done above about how debate is a unique side in which we can actually perform these like revolutionary to actually challenge folks to make violence. I can't even believe they made an objectivity argument when the entire process of the performance all they want to see is about how objectivity will not replace subjectivity in post-war discussions, i.e. we cannot ignore the functioning of bias in the status quo that informs how our politics operate. Now they consider that our ballot indict in the performance. Voting affirmative doesn't weigh anything against our performance. The way that we debate doesn't follow normative functions. We also win that they win no impact calculus here, which is also conceded their performance. Without revolution, no radical imagining will be able to outweigh the perpetuation of the rage or the value gap in the status quo. Now the Tweezy's framework also is a product of white indifference towards the ongoing violence on our black bodies. What we need is a new framework that challenges these ritual inequities and the value gap. That's Cooper enforcing fear of McDonogh JN Neg. Muslim freedom protest these have been met with the best kind of study of difference in the imagination of battles and cool arguments that will not democracy to believe that graduated decisions for devils will be acted by black American decisions feel like Jersey with the subject of localities. So many white people don't understand the racial attitude. These sensitive officers black people are simply sheep to swallow appropriate to many black people who don't understand this is the belief that we should simply lie down and take white people and afford us. Let's wait for this to take its course for the evidence to be evaluated, the witness to be and this is to be made. Black people know that there's been perpetuated too many white people line up for being better with the illusion that justice was served and the system worked, that the evidence indicated and they need to believe that white men do not deliberately murder black boys and get away with it as white person. I know that the luxury stepping over the bodies of Eric Garner, John Carpenter, to me arresting any one last question should alongside the lifeless bodies. What part of lifeless bodies?
28.
Be this K. K will be basically in the order of the 2AC and then the O.
Wait, let me process that. You said the order of the 2AC.
And then the 2NC over.
So like,
Okay. Oh, sorry, the order of the 2AC.
Okay.
So like what Ryan said, and then what you said.
We like
and
the
then
framework stuff, the permutation stuff,
Beautiful.
and then the overview.
Yeah.
Thanks, Weston. Save that for later. Thanks, sir. Alright. Wars coming in the status quo that escalates at the beginning of the chain evidence indicates security limits in space are the only way to are coming in the status quo that causes extinction. The more evidence indicates that escalates to nuclear war. The only way to resolve that is transparency and confidence building measures. The fiat loser argument will obviously be answered in the framework of their net. Our interpretation is that usually when the Aff the alternative's ability to solve the impacts that United States versus fairness, excluding the plan versus opposites of our main point of often rest and refocus the debate on the minutia of the money scene, sinking them to an alternative is key to ensure both sides have reciprocal burdens of proof. That's key to effective clash and dialogue. That matters. Niche said things like advocacy skills are the only impact that matters in this round. Obviously, the only way for that to happen is if we have clash over different ideas so that we can have a determination of what things are best. Second is prescriptive education, ignoring whether or not the alternative solves and simply hoping it does the same thing as when Trump says, hey, I can't be worse for black people than Hillary. Is only an analyzing the effectiveness of solutions less to determine which is actually the better course of action. Third is scenario planning, working and thinking through potential futures allows for a new analysis of possibilities to break down cognitive biases and groupthink that only turns a lot of their offense, even if they win framework way the Aff, if they win any linked arguments. The whole first part of the 1 and R about the revolution being within our heart. We do not preclude any of these arguments. Our argument is that we should have an evaluation of the policies that occur with the plan. That does not mean that the revolution cannot occur performatively because nothing about our framework excludes the analysis of performances. It just indicates that we should also be weighing that in the context of policy propositions. To extend the Newman evidence, it indicates the way that this works. We can use fiat as a tool to criticize the state. We have criticized the state for failing to implement a sound policy that is the same types of criticism that the law evidence isolates, because it indicates that things like grassroots criticisms of the state that talk about specific state policies that have yet to be implemented are bad things, which means that the Aff in fiat is an incident, is an example of this framework. They say fiat fiat good means that all the fiat good mean the arguments mean the presumption doesn't make any sense. The arguments they say the debate is better for education performance. We think that we're better for education. The Department of Evidence answers their arguments. Their arguments about that fiat is bad because it means that we just assume things happen. It indicates that the idea that we can imagine those scenarios allows us to break down cognitive biases and groupthink, which change our conceptions of the world and let us imagine more radical futures. Now, the French trial evidence will be answered on the link debate. The argument about the role of the ballot is just to vote for the best debaters. Anything else is inherently self-serving. Permutation debate. Permutation endorsed the 1AC's policy. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I gotta answer the Cooper evidence real quick. It's in the context of white indifference to things like the shootings of Eric Garner, which is obviously not a framework because we still include an analysis of those things. Now, the permutation it endorses the performance of the 1NC as well as the enactment of the policy of the 1NC. Their first argument is that we didn't know the black people. Not knowing the names of the black people is not a reason to vote negative. I'm not a space expert in all things. The app is actually not about astronauts, which does matter in this instance because their argument is about not being informed in the context of the things that we're advocating for. The app is about space situational awareness, which is a military issue and has nothing to do with people who are in space, which means that the burden of me having to know that is impossible. Even still, it's a reason that the permutation is able to solve because the affirmative can still be desirable. Now, they say that the plan doesn't do anything for black people. Not doing anything specifically for black people does not mean that the black communities other things like doing things for other minorities or generating just generally good things are still good even if they don't reduce the value gap. It's just a reason the permutation is able to solve that. They say it's severance. It's not because it's an affirmation of fiat as well as the performance. They say it's compromise politics. If we win the idea that we shouldn't have to solely focus on black people for every single policy, it's a reason that the compromise politics argument is wrong because we can still address the value gap through the permutation. Now they say kick the alternative judging is bad because it forces the 2AR to answer two different matters. The flight fluidity dissent was above the commodification dissent is wrong because the debate should be about developing the best strategy. It's not, and it shouldn't be viewed as us benefiting from the linked arguments. Exclusion of black people being excluded from space is not a critique of the affirmative. We're a critique of current space policy, which is just a reason the permutation solves because we're two different critiques of space policy. The glorious evidence is terrible. It's about nostalgia for space colonization, which is clearly not the affirmative, and cooperation empirically has been successful. That's the we didn't key evidence. Now the glot evidence indicates that concrete demands on the government are good and creates the political spaces that allow for radical change. They say that political parties are bad. That is not the affirmative. There is no reason that the affirmative prevents those more radical exponentials. Now they've basically conceded the warrants within the Johnson evidence that indicates things that progress has improved. This directly answers the thesis of their value gap arguments because it indicates that things like voting rights, the percent of black people that have been able to vote has increased throughout history compared to white people, which means that the value gap does decrease as well as things like the economic of saying black people compared to white people. Obviously progress is not perfect, but the gap is decreasing, which changes the thesis of their argument.
With 654. Start back.
Idiot. I flipped the same piece of paper 2 times. Before there's no new call. Yeah. I flipped it thinking another piece of paper. Hey, if John will bring us food, what do you want?
Something like.
I'll let you know where to go, actually.
Huh?
I'll let you know where to go.
Just give me something with like a beautiful hot sauce.
We need to. I was gonna make like a big circle around the NAR. Yeah, when you feel Jonathan,
Okay. So for the order.
Are you going to like?
You just said it's going to the order.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said I'm going. I thought you said I'm going to the K flow, and I was like, but like.
Shoot. No, so the way I'm going to do this is K overview, then straight down the K as we've been doing. All right. Anyone not ready?
It's a 3-0 for the negative from McDonogh. I'll go first. They lose the debate because they are bad from a critical conscience that perpetuates racial habits in the value gap where the people passing top-down policies devalue black life the same way they can't name any of the black astronauts we cited the form of policymakers they create through a framework of fiating top-down policy advocacy is flawed and recreates the value gap that we think is solved by our envisioning in democracy. You vote out because we have a better envisioning in democracy that would make the planet a better idea because it starts from a position of recognizing the value of black life. Our envisioning is mutually exclusive with theirs because we've performed a link to their educational model, indicting their policymakers to you do default negative because it's more ethical endorsement of the plan through the neg than the affirmative, which is also another index to the permutation, and they lose this debate because they haven't defended their model of top-down advocacy robustly. Every example any of their card cites about progress cites grassroots movements proving that the only way to achieve racially just policies through the bottom-up solutions, i.e. are envisioning a democracy that avoids the dangers of fiat. You can go to the framework debate. We create the best advocacy skills because they start from a position of critical cognizance and recognition of value, making us the best grassroots activists who can create good forms of progress that their own Johnson card cites, and the revolution will not be fiat to expose the limitations of the affirmative and the value gap. Our interpretation of how this debate should be valid revolves around the interpretation you should be a critical intellectual task with evaluating the best performative strategy to challenge the value gap. Our model debate ensures that the app can uphold a descriptive model that doesn't circumvent how we use the space of revolutionaries to perform our method to address the value gap. We meet our interpretation by the performance of the alternative. The affirmative has failed to meet this interpretation, which means when you vote affirmative, you are perpetuating the value gap in the status quo. This is key because even if they win all their other arguments on the floor, we see the revolution happens at the level of performance in the debate space, exposing the limitations of fiat when addressing the value gap and violence against black body in the status quo, which the app prevents. The role of the ballot, their role of the ballot is better accessed by the affirmative for all the reasons because and they don't meet it because of their representation of the perpetuation of the value gap. They say weigh the app versus the impact. This is how Nutrient wants to frame the round is clear. Loss for them. The alternative impact is the continuation of the value gap and discrimination. Racial habits more that are based on our literal performance. The app and impacts are all hypothetical either way because the fiat is illusory. Quick vote for the negative because they didn't answer this again. They say the key to clash and dialogue. They're extending arguments without answering ours. They conceded the question of clash doesn't matter in a world where they don't perform reimagination of democracy and black means their dialogue arguments are rooted in fiat is cool and whatnot for dialogue, but we're critiquing the way in which it has an effect on black people directly in the status quo, which provides better education, which the negative also conceded there. SOS is scenario blending, but once again, even if fiat is key to scenario blending to prevent impacts, they forget that fiat is illusory and our argument is about how we can use debate to challenge their value gap. They say fiat is good to imagine scenarios and new ways of viewing the world. Once again, the neg does is better, which means you can do scenario planning through our envisioning a democracy, which is better. Their Newman evidence is in response of our argument is not that they believe or have faith in the state, but rather their idea of fiat itself ignores the way in which we can progressively form from black politics and reimagine democracy in the play in the first place. They say real presumption argument doesn't make sense. This is a functional concession. The presumption argument was just that since fiat is illusory, the act is nothing but the neg actually challenges the status quo. This offense is conceded. Star. This argument, they never got back to the Crenshaw evidence, which is now conceded there. Silence in the way in which whiteness and white privilege operates as an active sustaining of that system. Even if you don't think we have a strong link, that concession warrants a rejection of the affirmative. Also, indicates all their framework arguments. You can go to the permutation debate here. First is that the permutation fails because they should not be allowed to perform the act that they are critically misinformed. Two, their subscription to fiat automatically turns permutation into an object of criticism by our performance because we've indicted the notion of enactment of their educational model forwards. Third, the permutation is severance because we reject their model of democracy. The permutation was a performance. The permutation they extended was performance plus the app, but our performance indicts the app. Literally saying your conception of democracy is bad in favor of our conception of democracy. Fourth, this permutation is compromise politics. This is the logic of sorry, we fucked up 60 years ago. We'll make a movie about it to make things better. Also, proves a link to our value gap argument. They say not knowing names is not a reason why the affirmative is bad. Sure, it's a reason why your value gap and performance is bad. So we should default to our envisioning democracy. Think of this almost as a pig argument. You can do the affirmative through our envisioning of democracy. They say he says he's not a space expert. Yes, but the fact that you're reading a space act and haven't done the research proves those material implications of the value gap. They say shouldn't have to solely focus on black people. That's a value gap that creates bad policymakers. We control the impact. This one makes being black in America so hard. Well, I'm only going to go for two link arguments. First, that black people have historically been excluded from the realm of space and indicating the racial habits of space engagement in movies. Like the figure speaks to the value gap. Black people are excluded from space in the form of recourse spending millions on a movie. There's also a respectability argument. They conceded that blackness is only accepted in their movements if it wears a funny bow tie and starts YouTube videos with "Hi, I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson. How are you doing?" Second, is the fact that they don't even know a single one of the black astronauts that listen cross-sex moves. They perpetuate the value gap. Their advocacy
an education and standing by ignorance, which justifies a rejection of the model in defense of their education. I kind of did more of this on the overview. They say the blog says concrete demands are good. First of all, they missed the boat on our arguments and haven't answered any of our arguments about how blog says concrete demands are good, but only if they start from the grassroots, which is able to turn the entire project to the affirmative in their conception of democracy, because our vision of democracy is better. Second of all, conceded the 2NC blog program says we need to be able to start from a new position, i.e. doing away with the political parties and sustenance of politics that they subscribe to be able to make those concrete demands in the first place, which turns the gap. They say Johnson says progress happens and gap decreases. First of all, again, miss the boat. We say we agree that progress has happened and that the value gap decreases, but that's only happened when we've done envisioning democracy in black through different forms of grassroots advocacy. Every single example that the Johnson card cites is examples of things that happen through grassroots advocacy, which is an example of how we can how we can affirm these forms of politics, and don't let them get out of this whole argument that they read these Wilderson indents against us. So proves the critical consciousness that's lacking that completely turns the type of policy makers they create.
Okay, 3:56.
Sorry, I got a breath.
Are there plugs near you?
There's one right just realized I forgot to do an overview.
I wouldn't know if I did that.
grassroots activism because it makes particular demands on the state that will be on the KPHD. Content debate is where they are severely behind. There is no specific link to why the affirmative is about, which means that a try or die for the permutation decay overview. Look, there are two things that the class is particularity about different policies that we're going to enact in order to hold the state accountable for it, in order to hold the state accountable for where they have failed. The alternative does one because they center on blackness, but totally fails at having policy particularity, which the app is really good at because we have a particular demand that comes from the people rather than top-down solutions. The only way to resolve these two things is the the only way to resolve these things is the permutational answers, the particularities of their argument on the K-flow, the framework debate. We're just going for scenario planning. They have dropped the link to that the environment evidence makes that scenario planning is the only way to test different futures. So test the best ideas causes a race to the top in terms of different strategies. Otherwise, their framework case is dogmatic because we just accept that we just accept the radical democracy, but not knowing exactly what that means as per 2NC cross exam. Only defending grassroots activism, but not the content of what that means. This is a critical distinction because that grassroots activism is without a particular grassroots, the same thing that got Donald Trump elected because white people went out and knocked on doors and got people to show up. This is a critical distinction that the Newman evidence makes because it says that we criticize the state legitimacy because we have pointed to an instance in which the state has failed and it is coming from the bottom. We are not talking about political parties, nor is having different political parties exclusive with the apps demand. Rather, it is a way that we should, it is a form of grassroots activism because the class says specifically that we need specific advocacy. They say it's critical for intelligence. We mean better because we create, they say fail to loser, we create better skills to take down, to imagine democracy because we don't end up being dogmatic. To have dogmatic thinkers, their really only answer is that it creates misinformed people because we don't talk about the value gap. That's all the question of the link debate because if we win that there's no link, we will have to win anyway. Then we create fine decision, we create better decision makers because we don't end up being dogmatic about the kinds of policies we make. The answers to Newman, that answers Newman, the presumption argument, the Crenshaw argument is going to be on the link to be the framing point on all their silence is violence arguments. These parts are all about things like police brutality, which is being colorblind in a racially sensitive area, but there is no reason that space is necessarily has the same sensitivity because there's no reason that it's different applied to different people, i.e. when the US says we should do SSA data sharing, it doesn't affect black people in a different way than it affects white people. The permutation do both the net benefit is the good arguments and the policy and our specificity of policy making is try or die for the permutation. I did that work about they say is critical and misinformed. That was the Barma extension that I did on the framework debate. It makes us better decision makers. The educational model. What the hell is this argument? I'm not sure. We see the enactment of democracy. We can combine this with the affirmative because it's a reason because the affirmative is a critical call on democracy. They see it's compromised politics. This is a link of omission. Not all policies that aren't centered on blackness are so good things. For example, they have no impact even to miscalc for a reason that preventing miscalculation is not a good idea, which means that even if it's not centered on blackness, we can still have a good policy. The permutation still resolves all the residual link arguments because it's a reason that we can have a discussion about why blackness can involve space-specific facts. They have dropped the 1AR analysis that this is a question of strategies. This is not compromise politics or is it white fluidity. If we just have a better strategy than the negative use of the affirmative, the link to the app exclusion from space makes no freaking sense. They have no piece of evidence aside from talking about hidden figures, which is linked to status quo. Not a reason that the action of the affirmative is about the respectability politics. Also not about the app. Why is this even a debate? Not knowing their names, they have dropped the 1AR distinction that astronauts have nothing to do with the app. Just because it is space means that they are missing on the policy particularity with their cloud evidence, which their cloud evidence says is necessary. There's no reason that we should have to know those names. The arguments about Wilderson at the bottom. Sometimes people make arguments that are not applicable. That is okay, nor is it's not a reason to reject the argument.
We're also responding to claims in the poem and stuff that said.
Yeah, we're also responding to claims in the poem that led us to get better black people.